Okay, I think we've kept you waiting long enough. Dylan, are you with me?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Hi, Dylan, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
Okay, brilliant. I hope everyone is doing well this afternoon. I hope you've had a good weekend so far. Um, Welcome to our open day about law. What I want to do first is sort of introduce ourselves a little bit. So my name is Will. I'm the head of consulting at UniAdmissions, and I went to Oxford myself. And basically, what I do at the moment is make sure that our team is able to help students. We're able to support those with questions, support those who need guidance with their applications. Dylan?
Yeah, I don't seem to be able to get my video on for some reason.
Is that my fault or
Yeah, could you just give me permission, I think? Uh,
um,
but while Will's doing that, I'll just I'll just introduce myself. You guys should see my face shortly. But my name is Dylan. I work closely with Will and a number of other consultants, and we help students and parents get through their applications. Okay, so we talk about law, we talk about various other subjects, but yes, we work alongside students and parents during their application cycle.
yeah, can you give the camera a go now? I might have.
There we go.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. Good to see you.
We're live, and you.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, now that we've got both of us here, and as Dylan alluded to, we do talk about law a lot. Today in particular, we're going to be focusing a bit on law and a bit on sort of what it's like at university and what it's like afterwards, and some bits and pieces to do with that. Next week, we'll be talking a bit more broadly, sort of not specific to any subject, but just more about what things are like when you're at universities like Oxford or Cambridge. So, if you're sat there and you're thinking, it all sounds quite exciting, but, maybe you've never been, maybe you don't know what it's like, that's probably quite a good one to come along to. One thing that I will say is there is a Q&A function. We aren't ignoring your questions. It's just what we'll do is as we go through what we want to talk about today, we'll then sort of collect all the questions, and then right at the end, we'll go through them all. So we'll have a big Q&A session right at the end. So please do pop in questions as we go through. Don't be upset that we're not answering them right away. We will get through to them. And it might be that we end up answering one or two of them as we go. Okay, marvelous. So law at Oxford or Cambridge. Naturally, it's a competitive course. Naturally, it's very difficult to get into, but of course, for the people sat there, whether you're parents or students, you must have something driving you in order to want to be able to do it. What we're going to do is talk about a few different things here. So firstly, talking about wanting to do law and wanting to go into law further down the line. We'll then talk a bit about the application process for law and what they're looking for and how you're going to be assessed. And then lastly, we will talk a bit about conversion courses as well, because if I'm sure a lot of you have long-term ambitions of being, barristers, solicitors, whatever it is, and it might be that for the vast majority of you, doing a law degree is the best thing, but actually there will be a subset of you who might be better off studying another subject and then doing a conversion. So we will talk a bit about how that works. Okay, but before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's talk about actually, why you want to be a lawyer. So ultimately, we'll both be able to speak from experience of speaking with students, but a lot of the students that I speak to who are keen on law have been interested in it for some time. Maybe they've been inspired by a TV show originally, or someone that they know in the family who's in that career. And they've been going out for this for a couple of years. For most people, it's because they really enjoy the idea of being a lawyer and the variety and the challenge that it has. But for a lot of people as well, it will be, financially driven as well. Dylan, what are the kind of reasons that you get given when you're speaking to students?
Yeah, very similar reasons. I find that a lot of students have watched Suits,
Yeah.
seen Harvey Specter, or they've got some kind of influence that's gotten them interested in it. But for sure, a lot of students speak to me about wanting to be able to make change, law is very much intertwined in society, and it's some way that you can make change. So another reason students say is that that they've seen something within society or seen some kind of problem that's resonated with them, and as a result they want to fix that, and that's led them down the path to choosing law.
Yeah, I think particularly for international applicants that I've spoken to who have lived in a few different countries, they'll often have different perspectives, and they'll have seen a place where it really worked and places where it really didn't work.
Yeah.
And actually that's a really big motivator to sort of, well, if it can work somewhere, then it should be able to work anywhere. Ultimately, whatever it is that makes you want to do law, it can be very, very broad, but make sure that it is something which you are really keen on. It's not easy being a lawyer. It is hard work. And all that hard work will be worth it if it really is something that you want to be doing. Okay, it's very similar with medicine. They're both very hardworking professions. And for those people who are sort of kind of interested, but not really that bothered, they find it way too much. But for the people who have always wanted to be lawyers, always wanted to be doctors, whatever it is, they find that actually the work is worth doing. Now, in terms of your application, there are obviously a lot of things that you can be doing at the moment. Naturally, most of you will be in year 12, but there will be some of you in year 11, maybe some year 13s as well. If you are thinking about selecting A levels, then you've got quite a lot of options. They don't mandate any subjects in particular. It's usually helpful to have some kind of essay subject, but actually you are pretty free to pick the subjects that you want and pick the subjects that you do well in. But of course, it's important to do as well as you can. Naturally, the entry requirements for A levels is actually a bit lower for law than it is for most other subjects at Oxford or Cambridge, but you are still competing with very, very strong other candidates. So you do want to make sure that the other parts of your application are as strong as possible. And then, of course, we've got the admissions test, the work experience, the understanding as well that comes into it, which brings us to effectively the way that we see the weighting from the data published by Oxford and Cambridge, the way that we see the weighting of a student's application. But Dylan, can you take us through it?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a lovely pie chart. I'm sure you guys have seen loads in your textbook careers, right? So with that being said, what does this mean for you with your Oxbridge application, right? So if we have a look at the blue pie, if you like, what I like to call these are qualifiers. So in other words, your exam grades. All right, so they're going to look at what you've done. So common combinations are GCSEs and A levels. But if you're international and you're writing IB or whatever the case may be, it will be your academic grades. All right, that has a 30% weighting on your application. Now, the whole reason why the rest of the process arguably was created was because a lot of students putting forward applications to Oxbridge do really well in this area. All right. And so as a result, there had to be extra steps, extra competition in order to differentiate the students from each other. Right. And so we move on to the other parts of your application. You can see a very big piece of the pie is your admissions test. All right. So in your guys' case, whether you apply into Cambridge, you'll have a test called the CLT, Cambridge Law Test, or you write the LNAT. LNAT is also outside of Oxford, so it's likely that you'd write the LNAT anyway for your other choices on your UCAS application. For the purpose of this, though, your admissions test has a very big weighting, usually 30% as well. However, Will, you might weigh in here because of what's been going on with COVID. It's likely that this might go up in terms of weightage.
Yeah. So what we are predicting now is that the exam grades will have a slightly less of a relevance to a candidate's application, and actually more weight so more weight than ever, even though they're already pretty important bits, more weight than ever is going to go to the test and the interviews. Now, if you're sat there, having got very good grades, that doesn't mean that you've done that for nothing. Obviously, you're still, you want to get as much of these different chunks as full as possible effectively. Obviously, that's the weird way of phrasing it, but that's a good way of thinking about it. if you've got that exam grades chunk and you've got the best grades that you could possibly have, then you know you're sorted on that front, and where you need to put in the work is everywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. So admissions test, guys, definitely for you. You want to be honing your skills on the admissions test. Okay, especially if you want to make it into Oxbridge. It's a very important part for any application, especially law, where there's a lot of students that realistically want to become lawyers. Okay, now given that you've done well so far, the gray bit over there is the next big chunk, and that's your interviews. All right, so the universities do want to have a chat to you guys and see who's the most interested in law, and they'll put you. Well, the way they do that is through an interview. You can see it has a big weighting, so take it seriously, and you want to make sure that you're able to deliver a good interview once you've been offered one. Okay, which leaves us with the smallest chunk there. Now, don't take it lightly, because look, it is still part of the pie. And ideally you want a full pie to make sure you get an offer, right? So everything else is your personal statement. Also things like your references from your teachers, things like what exactly you did for work experience and things like that. But majority of it is your personal statement, and where you would actually reference all these other parts.
Yeah, so oh, sorry, Dylan. I was just going to say, as you're saying, obviously certain parts are larger than others, but you still want to be doing as well as you can across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this is a nice, easy way for you guys to visualize your application. And, as Will said, you want to be maximizing, or at least trying to get as big a piece of each section as you can. All right. So if you know that, okay, maybe I've lacked a little bit in my academics, therefore, I have to make up on the rest. Alternatively, if you have maximized your academics, you want to make sure that you don't slack on the rest, otherwise you'd be outcompeted.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want all your hard work so far to be let down by the fact that you didn't realize how important these things were. You didn't know that you needed to have a bit of practice, have some preparation in advance.
Yeah.
I think it's always quite a shame when we speak to students who've been through this process on their own and didn't really have anyone to help them, and they say, I was told about the test about 2 weeks before it happened. I had no idea it was so important, all these different things. Knowing is sort of half the
First step.
challenge. And then it is the preparation. It is what's left after that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for that, Dylan.
You're welcome.
Last shift through. So you know how you're going to be measured. You want to do law, whether it's through watching suits like Dylan says, or through witnessing inequalities and having real life experiences yourself. But how do you make sure that you do well at the interview? How do you make sure that you do well at the end, all these different things? So the LNAT is a test of 2 parts. There's a multiple choice section and an essay section. For those of you who know this already, I appreciate this is a bit of repetition, but it's really, really important that you know what you're up against. Like Dylan said, lots of universities do use the LNAT outside of Oxbridge. So it's highly likely that, let's say, for example, if you're applying to Cambridge, it's highly likely that one of your 4 other choices is going to require an LNAT. Might not, but it's possible that it might. And of course, there are some universities that don't require the LNAT at all. So if you're interested in doing law, but you're not interested in Oxbridge, and you're not interested in, these other LNAT universities, then it might be that you can get away with just writing a personal statement like most other subjects. But, if you are an Oxbridge hopeful, then you've given yourself a bit more work, but it should pay off in the end. The CLT is, well, it has its own name, it's its own test, but it is basically just an essay. So, whilst in the LNAT they're testing both your essay skills and your critical thinking skills, with Cambridge it is effectively just an essay. And we've got here an example of an LNAT style question. So I'll read through it. So I'm sure otherwise we're all reading at different paces. So critics of homeopathic medicine argue that much of the apparent success of its remedies is due to the placebo effect. a placebo is a substance containing no medication. The remedies work because the patients believe they will work. In rebuttal, homeopaths often refer to a study involving a herd of pedigree Frisian cows. The herd was divided into two groups of 41 cows each. One group, the treatment group, was given a homeopathic remedy against mastitis, while the control group was given a placebo. The findings showed that 10 of the cows in the control group developed mastitis, while only one in the treatment group developed it. So you've got a bit of reading, and there is a lot of reading in an LNAT paper, and it's obviously talking about a very specific topic. But if you've never heard of a placebo before, or you've never heard of homeopathic medicine before, you will actually be fine to answer this question. You don't need to have that prior understanding, that prior knowledge in order to be able to answer this question, because it's effectively a question of sort of logical arguments in this statement. Okay, if you look through the A through E options, they may seem to be saying very similar things, and part of the skill is being able to notice keywords that are differentiating which is the right thing and which is the wrong thing. But you know, if this is the first time you've ever seen an LNAT question, you might go through and you might think, actually, sort of, how can I pass between these different questions? And again, you might even say, well, I know nothing about homeopathy, I know nothing about the placebo, I'm not going to be able to answer this question. Ultimately, though, you know, you're more than welcome to pop your potential answers in the chat. But ultimately, you should be able to see. Dylan, do you want to give this one a go?
Yeah, I'd say it's not a placebo.
You reckon it's not a placebo? You think it's the homeopathy is effective?
Yeah, I'll just go with that for the sake of this.
Okay. So yeah, obviously it's wanting you to work out which conclusion is best supported by the phrase, and hopefully you've worked out that it is C. So, but we can go through them one by one. So the beneficial effects of homeopathy are entirely due to the placebo effect. Well, the findings from the cows study, given that the study group developed much less mastitis, might suggest that actually the homeopathy does have some kind of effect outside of placebo. B, the beneficial effects of homeopathy are apparent and not genuine. That's kind of the same as A, basically, just rephrase. And again, what the tests or what the study seems to prove is that there is some kind of effect. C, the beneficial effects of homeopathy in cows cannot be due to the placebo effect. We've had two separate research groups, one with placebo, one with treatment, and there has been a difference in outcome across these groups. So this, you know, seems to be the most likely conclusion, but it's important not to stop now. Okay, it's important to just really make sure that D and E aren't equally plausible. Now, it's likely that they aren't, but the problem is if you then go through D and you think that's really plausible as well, then you might need to have a second look as to whether or not C is the best argument. But let's have a look. So the beneficial effects of homeopathy are experienced only by animals. This doesn't tell us that at all. That's a bit of a red herring. Obviously, they're doing the test in animals, but it doesn't tell us anything about how, you know, what effect it has in people from the study itself. The beneficial effects of homeopathy are subject to a great deal of ill-informed criticism. So, I mean, there's an argument to what degree that statement is, well, a good conclusion. I suppose you could say that if, you know, that the study is correct, then it may be that homeopathy is more effective than people are saying. But actually, that's not really the main takeaway from this passage. Okay, so we've had a look through all the options and we've established it C. Thank you for your patience in going through that, but hopefully that's been quite helpful to see what kind of things can come up and where you can get tripped up. Again, you don't actually have to know anything about homeopathy or the placebo. If anything, you could even be misled by your knowledge of homeopathy, because if you know that actually homeopathy doesn't really work, you might be inclined to just go for A or B. But, you know, you need to make sure that you are answering what's actually in this passage, not what you think outside of it. So that's the section one. In terms of the essay, again, you don't need to have too much specific legal knowledge in terms of your background, but you need to be able to make good, coherent arguments about the essay question at hand. Okay, they are looking for people who are able to handle information. They're looking for people who are able to evaluate sides of an argument. It shouldn't be difficult to work out why that might be important to them for something like law. Naturally, having understanding and broad knowledge is helpful, but it's not necessarily required to be able to answer all these questions. Again, you know, if you have limitless time to be able to prepare for this, then absolutely learn as much law as you can, because you should want to. But if it's a matter of you don't have limitless time, which sadly none of us do, then actually you might want to focus more on your ability to write good argumentative essays first and foremost, and then build on the law knowledge later. But here we have an example essay question. So actually, you know, it doesn't make too much difference how much you know about the law to do with the actual law in this scenario. You know, you don't need to know the specific legislation with what would actually happen. It's more asking you to evaluate this and you to evaluate the decisions. It should end up being an essay about sort of personal responsibility and freedom of choice, ultimately. You know, the drug dealer did supply the drugs which ended up causing death, but it was the individual who chose to do that. Very often, actually, you know, interestingly, sort of use of drugs, taking of drugs, and their effects, it often comes up in these kind of essay questions because it's quite an interesting topic, and it's a bit of a slightly less it's not as well established, it's not as clear cut, and that's where they want to see you work effectively. And when it comes to the interview, these are actually the things that you are rated on. So this is from the, basically, I suppose, interviews handbook that the tutors will have. They're looking for three things: your application, your reasoning, and your communication. So they want to see that you are very enthusiastic about your subject. They want to see that you're very enthusiastic when presented with problems and you're very interested and keen to solve them. They also want to see that you can go through those problems in a reasonable way, and that you can make sensible arguments. Even if you are making insensible arguments, you should be able to notice that and correct yourself effectively. There's no point just digging a deeper and deeper hole. And then lastly, of course, it's important to be able to communicate what you're trying to say, that your arguments that you're making and that you're applying yourself to are coming across properly to the interviewers, sorry. I mean, Dylan, when you're speaking with students, what kind of things do you see that they struggle with most?
I think it's about communicating the answers in the right way, which initially is hard, but with practice you can become better at that. So, as you can see from the interview, what they're trying to assess is really how interested in the subject you are, and how well you can explain that interest. So with that being said, you should be fairly good at receiving a question, forming your own opinion based on your experiences that you've had, which is why they say you should do a lot of work experience, wider reading. You're then able to formulate arguments, original arguments based on your experience, and then hopefully deliver it that way. So that's the whole idea behind it. So you really want to take the time to develop your interview skills. And so the way you do that is through practice. Once you've been gaining your work experience, your wider reading, and so forth, then what you want to do is get some practice. So as with any skill, as with any kind of I suppose new endeavor, you will have to practice. It seems like we've lost Will. So I'm just going to try and get him back. If you, in the meantime, if any of you have questions, this would be a great time for you to put it in the question box. And if you allow me 2 minutes just to get Will back onto the webinar. Okay, Will is on his way back. If you guys can just continue putting questions, I can see quite a few coming through. I'll just answer quite a couple while we're waiting for Will. Someone anonymous says, how can you practice interview skills? Right, so that's a good question. Well, you practice through mock interviews. So ideally you want to get someone experienced, someone that knows how to carry out law interviews. And then you just want to sit with them, practice, and then ask them to give you feedback. You then take that feedback, adapt it to what you have been doing, and then you can go for another mock interview and apply that feedback and those improvements. So that's what we do. What I'll be doing, or what we'll be planning to do with students is, all throughout the year you have your work experience and your super curriculars for the content, and then what you do is, before your interview, you want to practice the technique, and you do that through mock interviews. Okay, so I hope that helps. If you don't have anyone that has experience, then just get family members, someone that can allow you to sit in front of them and actually get working on your interviews. Okay. So I hope that answers that one. We seem to have Will back, so we'll continue answering the questions after the presentation.
Hi everyone, sorry about that.
What happened?
A bit of a technical problems on my end. How are you? Were you answering some questions in my absence?
Yeah, so just answered one question, so we'd have to finish them off at the end.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, my apologies everyone, but thanks for looking after them, Dylan. Where were we? We had been talking about interviews, hadn't we? Is that right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, let's go with that then. Oh, one moment. Okay, can you all see my screen? Or Dylan, can you see my screen?
Yeah, can see it now. It's all good.
Fantastic. All right, so before that excitement, we were talking about the interviews and sort of the things that you're being assessed on. Sadly, I missed I think I asked you a question about this, Dylan, but I missed your response, but I'm sure it was very, very insightful.
Well, we hope so.
We hope so.
Yes.
So you know what to expect. You know what the LNAT is going to be like. You know what the essays are going to be like. You have an idea of what they're looking for at interview. But we like to talk a bit about conversion courses. For those of you who know that you want to study law, it's absolutely the right subject for you. This isn't really that applicable. But for those of you who want to do law long term, but might actually really enjoy doing a degree in something else in the meantime, it's worth knowing that that is a perfectly serviceable route into a legal profession. Okay. So there are lots of people that do this. It's a pretty well-trodden path. So don't feel like you'd be a huge, you know, odd one out. You typically would do your undergraduates, and then you do another year at least of a conversion course. And you might have further training beyond that. So it is a slightly longer process, but of course, in that process, you're able to study more broadly. You know, if you really do want to study history or maths or engineering or whatever it is for a few years before then going into law, this is absolutely you know, a very good option. It's worth having a think about what you really want to study, and you know, what things you would enjoy doing. But if this is a option you'd like to do, then of course it is one you can do. And if you do want to talk about it a bit more, then of course please do book a consultation with one of us, and we'll be able to go through it in a bit more detail, basically. Okay. I come from a bit of a family of lawyers, and they say, well, their feedback is you're going to be spending a lot of time doing law if you end up becoming a solicitor or a barrister. So having a few years of studying something else will be a really great opportunity. But you know, that's their feedback, having gone through this process and sort of be at the professional side of things already, quite a far ahead of where you guys are at the moment. So that was just a little talk about the conversion course. Hopefully, if that is something you're interested in, you'll start researching it so you have a good idea of what's going on, and also start researching what other subjects you could be studying. Naturally, the application process is difficult and it is competitive, and there's lots to do and lots to think about, and there are lots of ways to go about it. But at UniAdmissions, we have a way that we find works quite well. It's not for everyone. We do expect a lot from our students, but Dylan, if you could sort of take them through the kind of things that we see as helpful things to be doing, and the kind of things that we have our students doing to help them get their offers.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I'll tell you how we help our students. Remember that the whole goal of this is that we want to outcompete others in that 70% of the application that we discussed at the pie chart stage, right? So this is the whole goal of this. And so the first part is one-to-one tuition. So our school has tutors from Oxford and Cambridge. So I would have a discussion with you. You can book a call with us, and then we'll have a discussion about your application, depending on which university you want to go to. So Oxford or Cambridge, that's where your tutor would have studied as well. So they will work one-on-one with you on your application, on your personal statement, on your admissions tests, on your interviews. All right. So the whole point of this, the whole goal of this, is that you have someone that's been through the process, that's been through what you're going to go through. But not only that, they've also got experience helping and teaching others to get into university successfully. So this is what you'll be doing on a one-to-one basis. At the bottom, you see that we have a panel of subject specialists, and that's because, like I mentioned when I was talking about mock interviews, when we get to interview prep, we want to get that practice in, make sure that you guys are honing your communication skills that you need. Right. And we do that by mock interviews, by practicing. Communication is a skill like any other. And the more you practice and the more you try to get your ideas out there through spoken word, the better you get at it. So that's one-to-one for each part of your application. And like I say, the whole goal is for your tutor to make sure that you're more competitive than other students applying. Okay.
We've also got a here we go, a sort of a feedback report from one of the tutorials. Basically, it's really important that students are outside of their tutorials, they have stuff to work on, and so they obviously are, you know, set homework during the sessions, but they also get sent these so that they have a reminder of what things they could be working on, what things they could be improving on. I think this is actually from a mock interview that Dylan was talking about. And we also send these to students' parents. I think as a parent, it can be quite stressful because you know your son, your daughter, they're putting themselves through lots of work at school, they're working very hard. And it's difficult to know, are they doing the right thing? Are they improving? Are they, what chance do they stand? And I think being in the loop with what they're doing with their tutors makes a big difference.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also worth knowing where where you stand, so you know where to improve. So this really helps. And as long as you take it seriously, engage in the program, the whole point of this is that you are incrementally each week improving, getting better. So by the time your application does come, it's really strong. Right. So we also have resources. So we do have a lot of resources. So this will come in the form, depending on where you are in the world. Again, get in contact with us will come in two forms. So we'd send you textbooks. You'd also get access to our online portal. Now, you guys, if you're students, I'm very sure over the last few months, dare I say years, we're coming up to years with COVID. Yeah, shocking, right? But
it is years, sadly.
yeah. Wow. But yes, during COVID, I'm sure you guys had access to a lot of online portals. So we have our own. Dare I say ours is the greatest, dare I say, right? But the whole idea is that you log in, you have access to everything that you need from A to Z to get through your application, all right? So materials on your admissions test, on your personal statement, as well as your interviews, okay? And the whole point is that you have materials to self-study, as well as materials for your tutor to set your homework with, or on rather.
We do have, well, I hoped we'd have we've got a brief demonstration of some of our materials here. I don't know, if there's anything you want to add while this is playing, Dylan, do go for it.
Yeah, so this gives you an idea of some of the content that you'll find in there. So this is a maths example. So you have the material for you to learn. So first thing is about understanding the content or the theories behind it. The next step, as you can see here, is revising what you've just learned. So for example, your LNAT questions, you want to revise, we've got a lot of questions for you to go through, stuff we've created of our own, as well as past papers, just so that you have that revision set so that you can practice what you've learned. Okay, and this is an example of what it looks like, so that you're not surprised when you get to the test. Once you're done with your revision, your learning, you then want to see what you might actually do in a timed environment. Speaking with a lot of students, this is an issue. Okay, so one of the hardest things about the admissions test is getting it done in the right amount of time. And so the way to know whether you making the cuts, shall we say, is by simulating the tests, taking the time to actually do the test in a timed environment, and the portal will give you the platform to do that.
Yeah, it's very different doing a few questions compared to doing all 42 in the example of the LNAT back to back. There's a lot of reading that goes into that. There's a lot of analysis that goes into that. And you really want to make sure that when you do go to the test, that's not the first time you've ever done that full set in one go. You want to make sure that that's sort of second nature to you by that point. Brings us on to enrichment seminars.
Yeah, enrichment seminars. So these are one of my favorite parts of the application process. So enrichment seminars, as we discussed, you guys need content for your interviews. So ideally, if you've been doing things correctly, hopefully you've been reading the right books, developing your interest in law. I know it's been tough during COVID, but if you have got some work experience or can put work experience in your plans, then that will help as well. But what we do to further this, and just to make sure that you actually have a solid base to or content based to base your answers off of, talking points to have, and just deepening your knowledge within law. If law truly interests you, then this will be a great part of the program, because they're law topics, university grade, mind you, very specific. So, for example, you might have topics like cases and how to read them, or dissecting an argument, right? And the whole idea is that we have a discussion, we have a debate around that particular topic every single week, so that by the time you reach interview, you have a solid foundation. But even for when you make it, when you have your first year, in uni, it'll provide a good solid base, worthwhile your time either way, not only for the application.
Very well explained. And we've actually got a clip from one of the first enrichment seminars we ran. This is actually from the medicine one, but they're talking more broadly about it. So don't worry, there won't be advanced medical content in this for you guys to keep up with. I need to share my sound before I do that.
The aims of these whole...
Can you hear that? Fantastic.
So the aims of these whole enrichments are supposed to be 24. It's supposed to guide you throughout your application with your wider reading. So everyone knows that you have to do wider reading to support your medical application, to sort of demonstrate that you have an insight into medicine. But the other thing that these enrichment supervisions will do is supposed to help you increase your confidence in discussing these different aspects of your wider reading, because that's what you're going to be asked to do at interview. So I think the best place to start building up your confidence is probably on here and talking in this group. And hopefully throughout all of the wider reading that we'll be doing with you, you'll be feeling a bit more prepared for life as a medical student and as a doctor as well.
So yeah, pretty well put, sort of echoing what Dylan was saying. On the left, we've got one of our young tutors she's a medic from Cambridge, and on the right, he is a medic from Newcastle. So, obviously as a medic, you're applying to lots of different universities. So you've got a bit of a range of tutor experience there to be able to work with. And of course, they're bringing their own experiences and expertise to each session. Dylan, last one.
Yeah. So, you've been doing the tutoring weekly with your tutor, hopefully doing your homework that's been assigned to you, right? And then, you have these enrichment seminars every weekend that's broadening your wider reading or your knowledge on law. Now, we want to tie everything up, maybe consolidate that information that you've been doing or you've been taking in, you've been learning, right? And so for each stage of the application, so each piece of the pie, from referencing the pie chart, right, is going to have an intensive day associated with it. So you'd have an intensive day for your personal statement. Depending on what your application looks like, you might have LNAT and CLT, as well as interviews. So there will be a day course for each hurdle of the application that you have to go through. And the whole reason, remember, referencing the strategy here, or just anyone's strategy, should be to put the most competitive application you can in. And so really, as with any performer, any athlete, anyone has to prepare for their performance, right? And so this is very much geared towards that. It's training, getting you ready. And so we'll have tutors going in depth into that particular part. So interview day, just mock interviews throughout the day. LNAT day, just LNAT past questions, papers, explanations. And the whole idea is that you really are maximizing those areas of the pie chart that we discussed.
I like your sporting analogies. Have you been watching lots of the Olympics?
Yeah, I have actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's good, keeping you inspired.
Yeah.
All right, fantastic. So yeah, obviously we put a lot together in our programs. We put a lot of effort into making sure that our students are learning a lot, and they work very, very hard to make this happen. But the upshot is, at the end of the day, it makes a big difference. Unsurprisingly, the better you prepare for something, the better you'll end up doing. And in a field like Oxford or Cambridge, like law, which is so competitive, and when we know that the tests, the interviews, they make huge differences to your chance of getting in, then it's not surprising that our students, given the amount of work they're putting in, do very well. Do well, exceedingly well. We're always very proud of the things that they achieve. It is, of course, worth saying that not all students that come our way do we recommend programs for. If you're speaking with Dylan or I or one of the other members of the team, and we're not convinced that you're ready to work hard and you're not going to give it your all and you're not committed, then actually we're not going to be too interested in putting you on a program if you're not actually going to make the most of it. I usually use the analogy of the sculptor. We'll give you all the tools, but it's you who needs to be doing the chiseling to make that final product as good as can be. We can't do that for you, but we will help you every step of the way. It's always interesting. Some families know this very clearly. Some families really don't have a very good understanding, but you can see how, whatever school you're from is doing. That data is published by Oxford and Cambridge. So if you're curious, if you're thinking, I don't really know what kind of support my school does, I don't know what kind of history they have with this, something like this, you can always find that out. And you can see what previous students in your exact same situation have been able to achieve. Now you see, the offer rate column does vary a lot. You've got some very, very expensive schools here, which are, in the 30s, 20% acceptance rates. So it is difficult to get lots and lots of offers. Of course it is. It's really, really competitive. And I think that makes us even more proud of what our students are able to achieve, because they're able to put together such an impressive performance, time and time again. Like I was saying, we are looking for students who are hardworking. If you do have a few lower GCSEs in your classmates and you're worried about getting in, but you are going to do everything it takes, then actually we're going to be much more interested in helping you than someone who's got flawless GCSEs, but really isn't going to work hard right now. They think they've done everything they need to do. And one of the many feedbacks that I get from students, in January when we're starting to get lots of good news is, I'm really surprised I got an offer because so-and-so in my class had better grades than me, but didn't. And again, if you remember how Dylan was explaining the pie chart, it's because they weren't focusing on the parts that mattered the most. It says here, we will always choose a motivated student with low grades over a lazy student with higher grades. It's just, it always works a lot better if you are very motivated yourself. And of course, we want to make sure that students are taking responsibility for their own learning. Like I said, we can give you all the tools, but you need to be ready to make the most of it. So we want to see you going to seminars. We want to see you engaging. We want to see you working through the materials and resources. And right at the start, we ask our students to, commit to that, to say that they are going to work hard. They are going to do everything that's expected of them. They're not going to sit through an hour tutorial with a world-class tutor and then not do all the things that they've told them to do. They are going to do all the homeworks, all the tasks that they're set. Luckily as well, people seem to enjoy the programs. Not only are they getting in, but they're also having a fantastic time on it. Dylan, you're absolutely right. Those seminars are a fantastic part of it. Really good way for students to engage with their subjects more and more. But we always appreciate these positive reviews, but we also appreciate if you have other less positive, more negative feedback for us. We are constantly improving our programs. We are constantly adding new things. So we recently added additional intensive courses for helping students choose Oxbridge colleges and also to help students choose medical schools. These are new things that we're always adding and adding to make sure that our students have all the preparation that they need. But we will always try and self-innovate, but it's so helpful when we have a big base of students and parents who are able to say, we need this would be better, we think we could benefit from this. And you're more than welcome to leave a review about anything. So whether you've interacted with us a lot or a little, we're always keen to hear from you. I'm sure we'll have a few one-star reviews over the next few days saying terrible technical difficulties during the open day, but we'll soldier on. But yeah, please do let us know how we're doing. The final thing that I did want to, well, there are a few other things that I want to talk about. Dylan, can you explain the cooling off period and what it's there for?
Yeah, sure. So, as I'm sure you all can appreciate, due to the nature of the applications, we want to do some further shall we call it screening for now, for lack of a better word. So, as Will said, the first steps, if you guys want to work with us and you're interested in, seeing how we can actually work with you specifically, all right? Because that's the only way we do it, is on an individual basis. So you give us a call. I'll go through an initial question set, making sure you're right for the program. Given that you are, the first 2 weeks are an opportunity to make sure that they have the time commitment, that they are able to go through the program. It's an opportunity for us to assess your engagement levels as well. We want to see how you're engaging in the lessons, how you completing the work that your tutor sets you, for example. So it's an overall period within the first part of the program, just to make sure that we're a good match. And that's part of the reason, I believe anyway, why we have such a great success rate, is because we have all these processes in place, this being one of them, to make sure that we are working with students that are motivated and that we can definitely get a place for. So we have it in, all thought out. So I would say first steps for you guys would be to book a call with myself, hopefully. But no, you come through to anyone.
Yes. So, if this is something that you're interested in, like we've said, we need to speak with anyone before we do anything. But Dylan and I and the rest of the team do the best job that we can in terms of making the right recommendations for students, but we aren't perfect, sadly. We're getting there, but we're not quite there yet. And of course, if something isn't quite right, that cooling off period is there to make sure that students aren't stuck in programs that aren't right for them. And they have that capacity to be able to withdraw should they need to. And we think that's really, really important. I think we've had about, each year I think we have about 2 or 3% of our total student cohort withdraw. So it's a handful of people. It does happen, but we just need to make sure that we are supporting people in the right ways and not supporting people in the wrong ways. That's so important. I also wanted to talk about our foundation. So we do support a number of students each year completely for free. So people will often ask, well, how much does a program of you guys cost? Ultimately, it varies a lot. It varies mostly based on you, because the nature of the support that one of the team are going to recommend is going to depend on a lot of factors. And that's why we ask lots and lots of questions in our consultations. But, for those who are struggling financially, we can offer support. So again, when people say, what is it going to cost? It could cost nothing, but it could be a huge different range. So the best way to get a good understanding of how it will work is for us to have that first consultation. Our aim this year is to help 250 students completely for free and have them on programs and have them getting into Oxford or Cambridge. So if you or someone is struggling financially and isn't getting the support that they need, please do put them in touch with us. If you go to uniadmissions.co.uk/foundation, there's a fair bit of information about it there, and you can actually apply directly there. One last thing to talk about is a podcast that Rohan and I started a little while ago. We haven't been very good with releasing episodes recently, actually, because we've both been quite busy, but it is something that we try to do quite regularly. Ultimately, we talk about, university, we talk about application processes, we talk about what it's like there, but we also, effectively talk about anything that catches our interest at the time. So we're both quite keen on the sciences, so naturally that's a topic that comes up. If you are looking for a new podcast and you've gone through all the very good ones, I'd like to suggest our somewhat okay one, and hopefully you enjoy it, and hopefully you get something from it. If you, particularly for the students who are watching, we are going to be talking about things which will be relevant to what you've got going on at the moment, so it should be helpful. And then I think that's it. So in the background, we've got this little animation showing you how you can book a consultation if you would like to speak with us. We'd obviously love to speak with you. It's always fun meeting new people, learning new things. We meet some really interesting people. I think Dylan's someone you were speaking with is a sort of, very accomplished athlete. We get a huge range of students and parents that we speak with. It's always so fun to to have those conversations. And the best way to get in touch with us is to book a consultation in this way. Whilst that's running in the background, we'll also go through the Q&A. So Dylan, if there are any questions you like the look of, do tackle them. I'll have a look through and see what ones we can go through. Some of these were clearly written at particular times. There's one which says, where do we find this? I'm afraid I can't remember what we were talking about at the time. So I'm going to just delete that one. Yeah, I have no idea what we were talking about, so sorry about that. Dylan, you got any questions?
Well, there's a couple about whether there's going to be a recording of this. So
Okay.
if all of you, if you want to see our lovely explanations once again, you can go on our website. You go click through to open days and you'll see a recording of the latest episode, which would be this one. Will, what's the wait time for it to be uploaded?
Usually a couple of days. So usually by Monday or Tuesday, it's up. I really hope my computer crashing hasn't broken anything. I don't think it has. So I think the recording should still be intact. If it's not, there are other open days that we've done. So there's always lots of other content. I think we did a law one about sort of 4 or 5 months ago now. So quite a while ago, but you know, talking about similar things. So if there are any problems with this, do have a look at that. There are quite a few asking about whether or not the programs are free or whether or not, you know, what the costs are. Again, the specific costs are going to depend on you. The best way to get a really accurate sense of how much support we'd want to give you and how much that would cost us to speak with us. For the people asking if it is free, it can be. You do need to meet some sort of financial criteria though. That criteria is listed on the foundation page. Again, if you want to book a chat to speak with us, we can always take you through it if that's something that you think might be applicable to you. Okay.
There's a question here that says, if my grades are really low, can I get into Oxbridge? So the answer to that is it depends by what you mean by really low.
Yeah.
You know, so if you could let us know by that. If it's in the C's, very much unlikely, very unlikely. So you just let us know what you mean by low, and then we can have a chat about that. But low grades are definitely not going to work in your favor. But how low? That might be the question to discuss.
It's worth saying for really, really specific questions, it might be that we ask you to effectively leave us, well, have a chat with us, because actually, you know, it might not be relevant to everyone, but there are presumably some people here that might be a little bit anxious about their grades. So this is a bit relevant. I think so. You've said that you're, so it's predicted 32 out of 45. What is that out of 42? Because the last 3 don't really matter as much. If it's 29 out of 42, then that is pretty low. For those of you with low predicted A levels or IBs, what I would say is that prediction may well get in the way of your application this year. But if you can do very, very well in your, you know, in your IB or in your A levels, if you can outperform what you've been predicted, then actually you'll have a perfectly serviceable application ready for the following year. Okay, so it might be that this year it's not as possible, but next year, you know, it should be much more. I think you said it's 32 out of 42. That is going to be quite limiting. I think it's going to be quite difficult for you. I never say so. You know, obviously there's lots of other context to take as well. I would have a chat with us to see if there's any context that might apply that might help. But just based on what you've said there, it's looking difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, your grades are important. If you guys just keep referencing just remember the pie chart that we went through. You know, when the higher ranked the university that you're applying to, the more filled out that pie chart is going to be via your competition, right? So with Oxbridge at the highest, you know, level, the grades are going to be pretty maxed out with your competition. So it's not necessarily, you know, low grades that's a problem. It's the problem is that your competition is out competing you. So yeah, that's the main thing with it. You know, no one. You have to beat the other applicants. Cambridge and Oxford are going to be choosing the best ones for the places, and so by having, you know, low grades, it's limiting. You can still apply, but be tough. And so, like Will says, you might have to look at applying once you have your achieved grades, and then your focus then becomes achieving good grades.
One thing to bear in mind, so a lot of people misunderstand like the minimum entry requirements that they put on the website. So they'll say, you know, it says 3 A's, I've got 3 A's, so I feel like I'll get in. But actually, no, the minimum entry requirement is set by your competition, like Dylan was saying. So if you've got 3 A's, but everyone else has 3 A stars, then you know, and you're equal across the rest of the board, you're not going to get the offer. Equally, if you have less than the minimum entry requirements, some people do make applications with less than the minimum entry requirements in their predicted grades, you know that you are going to have the lowest predicted grades out there. So the rest of your application has to be spotless if it's ever going to work. Plus, they're still going to require you to get their minimum entry requirements. So if you're predicted 3 Bs and you apply and you manage to scrape an offer, you're still going to need to get 3 As at the end. So they're not going to let you off on that one. Someone's asked about a threshold for the LNAT multiple choice score, where the university might disregard the application. So you should come, we do have there's an open day which is talking about like test statistics. Normally, for most of these Oxbridge tests, they don't specify an absolute threshold under which no one gets asked to interview. But of course, there will be a number which pops up, and it varies from year to year. I think we do go through some historic LNAT data in another open day. Basically, if you're in the bottom 50% of the LNAT score that year, it's going to be very difficult for you to get an interview at Oxford. Bearing in mind that they're quite selective, you're making your life quite difficult. Equally, on the flip side, if you're in the top 5% of the LNAT, you've got a very, very, very high chance of just getting an offer. Obviously, you'll interview as well, but we typically see across pretty much every admissions test, if you're in the top 5%, you get an offer. So, you know, if you're sat there and you're wondering what you could be spending your time on, admissions test prep is definitely the one, because that's an easy one to you know, it's clear what you need to do there.
It's always a tricky question to answer when it comes to what's the thresholds, because there is none each year.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why for you guys, you guys want to apply for law, your goal is to do the best in each area. You know, the day you shouldn't stop, basically. You know, if this is your true dream, then, you know, as with any competition, you never know. You know, Usain Bolt tomorrow might do a faster time, right? You know, you can never know, all right? And so it's down to your competition each year.
And it's also down to you know, your application is taken in context. So your threshold might be different to someone else's threshold if you've got very different grades and everything else. In terms of, you know, people often ask what should they be aiming for, and Dylan is absolutely right. You should be aiming as high as you can. But as a benchmark, I would want to be getting over. So lots of places say 27 is a good score to be aiming for. But, you know, if everyone's aiming for 27, then you want to be aiming for 28. You know, you don't want to be aiming for what everyone else is aiming for. So I would try to be clearing the 30s to, you know that you're pushing yourself enough. And once you get to that, push even higher. Someone has asked a very easy question. Where should we take the exams? So I presume this is referring to the admissions tests. The CLT, normally you would take that on the day of your interview. What they did, now they've announced that, but both Oxford and Cambridge have announced that they're going to be doing the interviews virtually this year as well as last year. What they did last year was everyone sat their CLT a few days before the test. We don't know if they'll do it the exact same way, but I imagine they will. What you normally do is actually sit at your school. So if your school is a registered test center, you'll be able to sit your LNAT there. If it's not, there are LNAT test centers all over. So you'll be able to find the nearest one and sit it there. Last year, there was a lot of complication over tests being done virtually or in test centers. We'll see if there's as much confusion this year. The sort of final answers haven't been given yet, and of course things can absolutely change.
There's a question here on do interviews take place in other universities, or is it mainly Oxbridge? So for law, it's mainly Oxbridge, although there is an interview at UCL if you take a European variant, but very unlikely. If any of you are interested in that, we can have a chat about it. Yes, it's mainly Oxbridge for law that you have an interview for.
Yeah, the only exception really being medicine, where everyone gets an interview, but for law, yeah, absolutely. Someone has asked, what is the admissions test content? Now, for the LNAT, the content is sort of, we showed you a question earlier, that's the kind of thing that comes up. So the content can actually be quite broad and varied, the actual questions, the things that the questions are asking you about. But you don't, like I was saying, you don't need to know the content to answer those questions. It's more a matter of critical thinking and logical analysis and very careful reading. So when people are preparing for the LNAT, a bit of content will help in the essay, but again, it's not necessary, but it could help. Whereas in the multiple choice parts, it's even less helpful and necessary. And it could actually confuse you a bit, because you might come into a question with some understanding, and that might sway you towards an answer which you think is right, but actually is not the best answer for what you're actually being asked. So I would worry more about just getting lots and lots of practice, basically. Hamza Malik has asked, can you apply to the foundation as a mature student? If you mean our foundation, then yes, you can.
We don't discriminate. We talk to all students. So no matter your situation, book a call with us or apply to the foundation, whichever route you qualify for. No matter your background, give us, just book a call. And, even worst case scenario, we let you know the right route to take if this is not it. So yeah, a mature and any kind of student, just apply.
Someone has asked about having mental health issues and whether or not this would be taken into account during the process. There are, so Oxford and Cambridge do take into account, your circumstances. So this isn't just for people with mental health issues, this is for people who maybe were severely unwell, had problems at home, whatever it is. If there were things which were getting in the way of you being able to do as well as you could in your schooling years, then they will take that into account. It's very difficult though for us from the outside to be able to tell you how much of a difference it makes. So there's not really a tangible metric at the moment that we have on, if you were poorly during your GCSEs, it makes X% difference to the strength of your application. If you suffer from mental health, what % difference does it make? We don't really know, but we do know that they will take it into account. And of course, the rationale being that if you were able to achieve the exact same things as, candidate B next to you, but you spent your formative years looking after your parents, you might have been a carer for one of your parents or something along those lines, your achievement is, of course, more impressive. And that's, of course, why they want to take into account, because they want to make sure that they're taking on the best candidates. I'm sorry I can't be more specific with what kind of difference it makes, but hopefully that gives you a sense that it will be taken into account. Broadly speaking, Cambridge are a little better at gathering information about their candidates. So if you're not sure which one to go towards, it might be that Cambridge might take that into account slightly more than Oxford. But again, it's difficult to quantify that. Someone has asked how to book a call. Hopefully you can still see, I don't think it's running anymore. Well, the animation has stopped, but you can either give us a ring, you can book on our website, and hopefully you'll get, Dylan on the other end of the line, there ready to answer your queries, ready to, calm you down and help you with your application. Okay, we've got lots more questions. Do keep coming in. Someone did ask, when do you take the LNAT for 2022 entry? It depends. If you're thinking of applying to Oxbridge, then you need to sit it before, well, the deadline, the last date to sit it, I think it's the 15th of October, if you're thinking of going to Oxford or Cambridge. If you're not, then it's usually middle of January is your deadline, okay? So, you know, we do say our answers always depend, and we're not making it up. They almost always do. It's never a simple, this is one answer. It's always dependent on what's going on with you.
And the CLT, as Will said before, is at interview.
Yeah, but it might be that they do it a couple of days before if people are doing it virtually.
Yeah, yeah.
Someone has said, this is an interesting question. So there's quite a few questions about GCSEs and grades. So I'll spend a bit of time working through those. So someone said, if you have all 7s, 8s, and 9s and produced all A stars for A levels, but 1 5 at GCSE, would it greatly reduce your chance of getting an offer? So in terms of GCSEs, your GCSEs are measured in 2 ways. They're measured in total number of A stars, so 8s or 9s, and also ratio of 8s or 9s to non-8s or 9s. Those are the 2 broad ways that they're measured. In this way, having 8 9s and nothing else is actually stronger than having 9 9s and 3 Bs. Even though the second one has more 9s, they're brought down by the lower ratio score. Okay. Now, it does depend a bit on what stage you are in, anonymous attendee. If you are, well, no, you must be sitting your A level. So you've received your 5 grades. Ultimately, it will make your application weaker than if it wasn't there, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're sort of written off. What you will want to make sure is that you're doing as well as you can everywhere else. For anyone watching this who's in year 10 or in year 11, I'm not entirely sure how it works these days, given the way that the grades are given, but in you know, normal times when exams are sat and you know, school is in session ordinarily, if you do have flawless GCSEs, but you have 1 5, 1 4, 1 6, you can actually effectively refuse it, and then it doesn't go on your record. Whereas if you leave it till the sort of year 12, it's too late. So it's worth, if you are one of our younger viewers, it's worth just bearing that in mind, that there is a bit of stuff that you can do there to help. And then someone has asked, if I get ABB but show lots of passion and motivation for the subject and extracurricular activities, would I be able to get into Oxbridge? You could get an offer, but you'd be rejected. Your offer will be conditional on your 3 A's. Unless you've got some very, very good extenuating circumstances. Typically, even if you did get an offer, you know, they loved your LNAT, they loved you at interview, they'd still say, we'd like to take you on, but we need you to get 3 A's. So that is what's going to be the hiccup, basically, in that plan, sadly. If you've said, if I get ABB, so it sounds like you haven't sat those exams yet, work very hard on them. If you need extra help from your teachers, ask them for it. If you need to spend less time doing extracurriculars and more time on your A levels, I would recommend that. Not all extracurriculars are as beneficial as people think. So it might be that you're spending time on things that aren't going to make that much of a difference. Again, have a chat with us. Dylan, any questions you like the look of?
Let's see. Someone says, if you have a history of nerves getting in the way of interview settings, and it's not as quick thinking, taking more time to process and craft a response, is it something that can be worked on? So look, I mean, you know, if you have that issue right now, or if you have in problems, you know, I guess communicating your message or formulating the right words, maybe you're thinking something, but when it comes out, it's completely different. I know that used to happen to me. You can either leave it and not do anything about it, and then you always have that issue, right? Or you can practice and improve. So there is no other way around it. There's no fancy answer except practicing communication and speaking, because that is how you go about it. I myself do this all the time, trying to find out ways in which you can improve the way you get your message across, right? And so don't put too much pressure on yourself if you're not getting it straight away, because just as with any skill, there is a learning curve involved with that. But you much rather start learning those skills right now, and then as they, as you get better, as you go along, they will develop. But if you ignore them and just think that you're always nervous, or think that you're always bad, then that's what you always will be. So exactly what you're saying, take the time to hone the skills and practice, and you do that by going out and speaking to people, and there's abundance of possibilities for you to do that, and ways for in which to practice your communication.
And also, one thing that's worth saying is don't be embarrassed to take a bit of time to formulate your responses. You do not have to, as soon as they ask you a question, you don't have to bound out with a paragraph of response. You're very much welcome to clarify. You may very much welcome to ask them a question about their question, or take a moment. Don't feel like you're under a pressure to have a perfect answer immediately. They are more interested in how you get from A to B, not the fact that you get to B right away. Someone did ask, did you do law in Oxford? Sadly, no. So I studied experimental psychology when I was at Oxford. We have actually, in previous talks, we've got one of our tutors to join us for the Q&A. We should start doing that again for future seminars, because future open days, because I think it's helpful for you guys. Because obviously Dylan and I know a lot, but not quite as much as someone who's actually studied it. And again, that's why we take a lot of care with our students when selecting tutors, because we want to make sure that you're getting the right support from the right person. You want that kind of the right kind of expertise to be guiding you, and make sure that you're doing everything properly.
Yeah, my job really, guys, is to guide you through your application. Okay, so I have a lot of knowledge on the UCAS application process itself. And so once you come through to myself or one of my colleagues over the phone, what we'll do is, from our experience, from our knowledge, try and determine what it is that you need specifically for yourself to make it through to the offer that you deserve, right? Once you get through us, we will then start putting it together. And part of that is getting access to that law professional, someone that studied law at Oxford or studied law at Cambridge. But before you get to that, we want to make sure that you're right. And we have a lot of knowledge, hopefully, that we've demonstrated today around UCAS and how you get in, right? So that's how it works. Hopefully that gives you guys a bit of insight.
Yeah. On that note, someone said, having Cs for GCSEs, is there a point in applying for Oxford or Cambridge? There might be. It depends. Have a chat with us. For example, how many Cs? Might be that's better to apply to Cambridge. What school do you go to? How did the others in your cohort perform? Lots of other factors that will tell Dylan or I whether or not that's going to be a problem. And if it is a problem, we will tell you. We're not the kind of people to say, no, don't worry, just apply, join a program, you'll be fine, knowing that you are so, pulled down by the grades that it's never going to happen. We are going to be as realistic and as honest and as upfront with you as we can. And if we say that, sorry, based on our experience, we wouldn't want to support you with an application, you're still more than welcome to apply, but we're not doing that to be difficult. We're doing that because, there are people who would very happily take your money and know that you won't get an offer. And we avoid that, basically.
Yeah.
Someone's asked if an EPQ will help. An EPQ will help. But sadly for you, the longer answer is that it depends. Because if doing the EPQ is getting in the way of you doing other stuff, then we need to have a discussion about your workload. Because if you are at capacity and doing your EPQ means you can't prepare for the LNAT properly, then actually the benefit of the EPQ is far outweighed by the fact that you've not prepared for the LNAT properly, because the LNAT is much more important. That's just an example. if you are not at capacity at all, if you're nowhere near capacity, then yeah, do it, of course. Same goes for having a fourth A level, actually. So having a fourth A level will make you a stronger candidate. It won't make you a whole A level worth of effort stronger. And actually, it doesn't make as much of a difference as lots of people think. It can for particular subjects. So particular subjects like economics, where they do like you to have done further maths, or natural sciences, where it helps to have done quite a few sciences. There, it does make a more tangible difference. But actually, for other subjects, it doesn't. However, if you have the time to do it, and it wouldn't get in the way of your LNAT, it wouldn't get in the way of doing an EPQ, it wouldn't get in the way of, you know, doing that fourth A level wouldn't mean that you do less well in your other A levels, then yes, do it. If you're unsure, then we can have a chat about it and we can see.
And yes, from anonymous attendee, just to clarify, Cambridge.
Anonymous attendee has had a lot of questions today.
Yes. It does not require the LNAT. So that is a correct statement.
Yeah. So you can. I think they're asking if you can take it later. You can.
Yeah.
That's not a problem.
Is there an exam for UCL law? Yes. The LNAT. Awesome. Okay. What else have we got in there?
Do you want to pick out one or two more, Dylan? And I'll do the same, because I think we're getting to the end of them. If you have asked a question and we haven't answered it, it might just be that, well, we've had a lot of questions. Sadly, we don't have all afternoon. But it might also be if it's very specific and we feel that we'd rather answer a question which would be more helpful for everyone here. Again, if you have unanswered questions, you can always leave us an inquiry. Studying something else, and someone asked about, yes, so I'll just talk a bit about doing a conversion course. So the first question was, if you do the conversion course and you haven't done law, do you have a lower chance of getting a training contract with a Magic Circle law firm? So I sadly don't have a lot of experience. So I did say that I've got a sort of a history in the family of lawyers, but they're all self-employed, barristers in sort of central London chambers. But they are involved in hiring new pupils. And broadly speaking, it doesn't matter if you've done a law degree or you've done a conversion, provided you just need to be the strongest candidate. For law firms, I'm afraid that's not an area that I know as well about. Again, this is where maybe we should have gotten one of our to help out. But I would imagine there's, there should be, if you do a bit of research, I'm sure you'll be able to find out. Anonymous attendee again has asked, studying something else and then law, does that mean extra years of university? It does, at least another year. Dylan, any questions you like the look of?
Let's have a look. So is a lot of work experience taken into account? I don't know if we covered that. So I did mention this a little bit in my ramble. So your work experience will come into play in how really in your interview, how you explain it. The official advice from universities, as I understand it, is that they realize that COVID has been around. And as such, they'll take that into account when it comes to work experience. For you who is sitting with a lot of work experience, I suppose that doesn't help your case. So where this is going to be most useful for you is what we discussed in your personal statement and your interview. So a lot of work experience, in my opinion, helps or will be taken into account. Yes.
Yeah. And then just finally, someone has asked if you can resit the LNAT. You can, but you're not going to like this. You'll have to reapply. So you only sit it once per application cycle. So it really is, it is it. You've got to make sure that you're prepared for it. Don't walk into it not ready. And yeah, why don't we'll leave it there for this afternoon. Lots of good questions. Thank you very much for asking them. It's always nice to get quite a lot of engagement. But if you do have more questions, like I said, please do feel free to get in touch with us. We're more than happy to speak. Dylan's a very chatty man. I'm sure he'll be very happy to speak with you guys. Enjoy the rest of your weekends. If you're watching Olympics, does the Olympics run over the weekend? It must do.
I don't know if there's any games today. I've been speaking to students and parents.
Okay.
I hope there is, so I have something to do after work.
It's always nice. Yeah, it's nice to come
Yeah.
back to it. So whatever you guys are up to, have a fantastic weekend. Thank you very much all for coming. Hopefully this has been helpful. And yeah, it's bye-bye from me.
Goodbye. Hopefully I speak to you guys over the phone. So do book a call. Hopefully you found this useful and have a good rest of your Saturday.
Take care. Bye-bye.